So I've been asked just to talk about the eligible container factor, how it's derived, what it means and how it's distributed. So there are two documents that the EPA that are available in the public domain on the EPA website. The first is the MRF recycling protocol and the second one is the sampling plan. So the MRF protocol was put together after extensive consultation about how the money flow, how the auditing process, how do we get the containers that are still in the yellow bin, how does council end up with some of that money that the community effectively are forfeiting by leaving it in the yellow bin and not actually taking it and redeeming it individually. The sampling plan was developed by the statisticians as to what is the method, a statistically reliable, robust method of how we're going to determine how we collect the data and how we get reliable data to inform the sharing of what that money or the amount of money will look like. So the eligible container factor is basically based on the number of eligible containers per kilo of material processed at a material recovery facility that comes from the yellow bins. Its factors are determined through physical characterisation audits. So we, APC, were appointed for 3 years to be the auditor, the scheme auditor for New South Wales and the ACT. We have a contract with Exchange for Change, but we answer to two masters, the Exchange for Change and the New South Wales EPA. So the MRFs have an option that they can do a direct count of all containers or they can use the average factor. In Queensland, it's a slightly different system where each MRF has their own factor. In New South Wales, the small rural council said the cost of the audit will be more than what the benefit will be. We want to go with the average. So that's how we ended up with a statewide average through the consultation process. You cannot sort glass at the curbside after it's been in the truck and delivered and squashed and broken. So glass is sorted at the curbside and every other material is sorted at the MRF. So it's a combination of curbside, which is where we need to work with councils and with the MRF operators. And we collect the data and then simultaneously lodge it with both the EPA and Exchange for Change at the same time. So I'm just going to focus a little bit on curbside because I'm assuming most of you in the room are from the local government sector. So all councils basically are put into a list of a stratum based on a number of characteristics by the statisticians. There's a mix of stratums that are selected each quarter and therefore there's a mix of councils each quarter. Some councils are new and some councils there are in every quarter to allow trend analysis to occur over time. So that's why, and there's 30 councils per quarter, and there's also, which means we're collecting 100 bins from each local government area, so 3,000 households randomly selected across the entire state is what informs the glass factor. And that's split between metro and rural, so it's like the 80-20 rule. 20 councils of the 30 are from the metro area and 10 are from the regional or rural areas. So I'd just like to acknowledge and thank everybody that's helped us to deliver this project because we cannot do this without the support of the councils. And so far since the scheme has commenced, as of today, we have audited 167 councils. So no mean feat by us or by you. So thank you very much. So each quarter we get a list of councils that we need to audit from the statisticians by the EPA. We then contact each of you and we say you've been nominated for this month. We need to determine the housing stock. So we need to know what's the proportion of single dwellings to multi-unit dwellings in each council. So if you're a council with 70% single dwellings and 30% MUDs, our 100 household sample is 70 single dwellings and 30 MUDs collected at the same time. We need your calendars, your maps, your databases. Some councils have got everything online, some councils have got very little online. So we need to randomly select streets. We then use the standard New South Wales EPA kerbside audit methodology. Randomly select streets on the right day and then pick every second house that presents a recycling bin in that street. We determine a quarterly schedule. For the metro areas, it's relatively easy. We have our own collection vehicle, we have our own sorting site. When we get to the rural areas, what we found the first quarter, we used our own vehicle. It was a vehicle that the community were not aware of, they didn't know it, and we weren't picking up their yellow bin on the right time, on the right day, but the wrong time. So that caused a little bit of angst. So then what we now do is we ask the council or the contractor to let us use their vehicle, their drivers, and we collect it using the normal vehicle that the community are familiar with, which reduces significantly the amount of angst. We've been accused of robbing, stealing, emptying, scounging, bin diving, the whole works, and particularly in the rural areas where they're very parochial about their bins. So we then give you the list of the streets that we're going to randomly select. You tell us whether or not that's a representative list. We don't know whether it's social housing or whatever. In some cases, there's an adjustment to that, and we give you a reserve list as well. So if you're a rural or regional council and we say we need to be there on Tuesday, Wednesday or Thursday in a month's time or 3 weeks' time, the reason for that is that we have to develop a milk run to go around the state. So basically I've got a team of staff that sample, sort, travel, sleep. Sample, sort, travel, sleep. And that's what they do around the state. And they can be on the road for 6 to 8 weeks. So with the kerbside, that's where we're collecting really the data for the glass. So in the rural areas, we need to arrange sort sites, which ideally is at the MRF, but not always the MRF isn't in every town. And we need to be able to have somewhere that's undercover that we can do the sorting. We need to sometimes organise for the disposal of the 100 bins, either back to a MRF or some other location. And we need to know where and how we're going to basically be able to do it. So it's basically a major logistical exercise in the rural areas. What we actually do is we pick up our 100 bins, we remove all the contamination, we remove all the paper and cardboard, which leaves us with all the containers. And then physically we go through and categorise all the containers into either plastics, glass or aluminium. We don't sort or count, we do, steel and liquid paperboard. And then we basically count and weigh each of those components. And the individual components need to add up to the total weight of the load. With glass, because glass does break, it is possible to identify glass bottlenecks. So from the necks you can determine whether it's a wine bottle or a beer bottle. So broken necks are counted as being an eligible container. So if you've got a neck, you assume the rest of it is broken somewhere in the fines. So we count whole bottles and bottle necks for the glass. And we count everything else as well to cross-correlate with the MRF data. So we have the total, for glass, we have the total amount or the total weight of all of the glass. We then have the count and the weight of the whole bottles, the count and weight of the bottle necks, and then we have all the glass fines and the other material. And we just repeat that process every time. With the MRFs are defined by this definition. There are 4 different types of MRF. The first is, do they separate PET and HD from other plastics, or is it just all mixed plastics together? And often the MRF will change from one method to another depending on where their markets are. And then if you're a mixed plastics MRF, then you may be a small, medium or large. And depending on what category of MRF you are, there then is a list that we're basically given of where each MRF is, what category they are, based on what they sort and what size they are, which has been information provided to the EPA. And then for each of those categories, we are then given what the sample size is for each type of MRF. And that's the number of samples by material type that we need to collect and sort at each location. To determine the factors for all the other materials that is not glass, we then basically have to intercept the material before it's gone through the baler. So after it's been sorted, after the last QA point, but before the baler or before it's compacted, we need to intercept the number of samples as per each of those materials. And then the only thing that we do with glass is we do need to sort, sieve and separate out any contamination that is in the glass. So we currently we're required to do 15 MRFs per quarter, so 60 MRFs a year, and about 4,500 samples per year are undertaken at the MRF. We're not sorting liquid paperboard, we're not sorting steel at the MRF, mainly because the only thing that's packaged in steel is coconut milk, or coconut water, and liquid paperboard's in the paper line, and we are not sorting the paper line. So we've got the total weight of the containers, we've then got count and weight of each of those items, and then the weight of the other material. And then with the glass, again, what I've just said, we collect a sample of the glass fines or the glass output. We sort and sieve that in 10 kilo lots and remove all the contamination, and then the number of containers per kilo that's collected from the curbside, the amount of contamination at the MRF is deducted from that, and that's how you get the number of eligible containers per kilo for your curbside glass number. Right, thank you.